Seven U.S. allies just announced support for a coalition to secure the Strait of Hormuz. And on the surface, that looks like alignment with Washington, D.C. But when you look closer, there's no real commitment to send ships, there's no clear military role, and several of these countries have already ruled out direct involvement. So what you're seeing is something more complicated. Support without participation, alignment without commitment. And that tells you something important about how alliances actually work. Hello, I'm Michael. This is Southern Realism, a channel about power, geopolitics, and decline. Politics is the balancing of distinct interests under conditions of expanding power. What we're looking at in the case of Trump's pressure on European allies and their response is symbolic support versus real commitment. European governments are signaling support to keep the strait open because that matters to them. The energy flows, global trade, stability, all of that is very important to Europe. But there's no firm troop commitments. There's no clear naval deployment. This is largely political backing. And even now, key countries are hesitant to take part in actual operations. So this is not full cooperation. It's a limited, carefully controlled form of alliance. And that's because interests still diverge. From a European perspective, a wider war with Iran is risky. It could mean, it almost certainly will mean, more regional instability, more migration pressure, a disruption to already fragile energy markets. So Europe's position becomes very precise. Support shipping, support keeping the strait open, but avoid escalation into a wider war. In other words, they support the objective, but not the broader conflict. And that's not inconsistency, that's distinct interest in action. At the same time, the U.S. is pushing for broader involvement. This is a familiar pattern. Institutions always expand beyond their original scope unless something prevents them from doing that. NATO was built as a defensive alliance. Now it's being pulled towards a wider geopolitical role. And member states don't all share those expanded interests. So what you get is public unity, but private limits and growing internal tension. This is how alliances get pulled towards potentially ruinous wars of choice, even when key members are reluctant to get involved. So Europe is not rejecting the United States. It isn't fully joining the war either. It's doing something more calculated. It's supporting the parts that align with its own interests and resisting the parts that don't. And that's not a breakdown of the alliance. That's how alliances actually function when interests begin to diverge.